And now, ladies and gentlemen, Skywalker.
Hi, thank you, Jim Davis, and thanks for tuning in to Radio Memories here on January 19th, 2022. And of course, Radio Memories sponsored by the pros at Audio Girl Productions. If you want production, get it done right by Audio Girl Productions. Check them out at audiogirlproductions.com. What a great show we've got lined up for today. It's our friend Tony Cox. I've known Tony for a long time. He's been up and down the radio dial, Chicago, San Francisco, Sacramento, and a few other places. And today he is going to share his radio memories. And from his home in beautiful Sacramento, California, Tony Cox. Tony,
hello,
Happy
Dave.
New Year.
Hey, how are you, Sky?
You know what? We were supposed to be on last week, and then something happened, and it was a very strange event, and I had to put it on the air, so we postponed it 1 week. And I'm glad you're on with us this week. And thanks for being here with us today, Tony Cox. You have a great career, a long career in radio. And can we talk about, first of all, what happened?
It was just one of the strangest events in my life, and it involved what we were trying to do last week. Why don't you kind of recap? By the way, the show last Wednesday about this was a wonderful tribute, Sky. It was really well done. So catch everyone up on what happened.
Well, you and I were talking about your career, and you brought up Billy Pearl, and out of the blue, and you had brought him up on the day that he had passed away, which was
I think it was around the moment.
I don't know. I really don't know, because I don't have any timetable. But what was strange about this is the video glitched about 10 seconds after we start talking about Billy Pearl. And I thought it was my fault. And I thought, and I talked to you about this, and I downloaded again, and there was nothing I could do. And I said, oh, I'm going to have to call Tony and get this and say, oh, I apologize profusely, but we're going to have to do the interview again. But I had realized that it had glitched at the point where you had talked about Billy Pearl. And it was amazing, because I had received a call the next morning on January 5th from Kevin Gershon, who he and I have known each other since we were 12 years old. And he is a big executive at Entertainment Tonight. And he called me at 7:30 in the morning, and he said Billy Pearl had passed away. And I was really surprised. He was only 71 years old. And I didn't know that he had suffered from cancer. And it was for only a short period of time, just a couple of months. And at least that's the story I was told. And I didn't really know Billy Pearl. And I don't think you did either.
No, I
so
didn't.
When you mentioned him, when we were talking about your story,
We were talking about other people. I was in Chicago at the time. We were reminiscing about JOCKEY'S then. And in the middle of naming JOCKEY'S, the name Billy Pearl popped into my head. I haven't thought of him in so long. I don't know where that came from. I had other JOCKEY'S that I had planned to talk about. Not that Billy Pearl wasn't great. It's just not the name I thought I would pull up. And when I said, have you heard of Billy Pearl? And you started telling me about all of this stuff about Billy, it was the day he died. We didn't know about it until the next day. And as soon as I said Billy Pearl and we started talking about him, the video started artifacting and decaying. So I don't know. When you called me the next morning, David, and told me that, the hair on my arms stood up. I still feel connected with Billy. Never met him before. God rest him. And I got to tell you, last Wednesday's show, the tribute you did to him was amazing. I found out more about Billy than ever, and I feel connected to him for some reason. God rest you, Billy. And I spoke to a friend of mine this morning who was his first newsman in Los Angeles at KYMC?
KYMS.
KYMS.
Yeah.
And this was back in the 60s, man. And this newsman, Marshall, who we can call and he can tell the story, he and Billy covered the landing of Armstrong on the moon live on KYMS.
Yeah.
So that this morning, he called me out of the clear blue to tell me that. And I go, you can't believe how Billy Pearl has been the center of my cosmos for the past week. And I don't know why, but what an honor.
Let's get on with Tony Cox and get on with his career. And where does it begin?
It begins at one of the smallest radio stations in the country. It was a little AM rock and roller up in Marysville. It used to be country. And in 1969, it was taken over by General Broadcasting, Jerry McClevis. And he brought in a whole new format to a very small town. It sounded just like KFRC. He went and got the Pepper Tanner jingles. We had all of them, slow to fast, different keys, shotguns, weekend jingles. We had everything, 20 news. We replicated KFRC, and I was 14 years old when I got my first job there. So I learned, first of all, if I had a son, 14, the last thing I would let him do is what I did. Hang out with 21 to 40-year-old men in a radio station. I kind of grew up fast.
Yeah.
And I'll be paying for that the rest of my life, but I wouldn't trade it for anything, David. So I started very young at a small station. I immediately, after I graduated high school, I had 4 years in the business. So I left town. I left my little pod, my little Mayberry, and I went out to venture into the world using skills of communication. Wow, it was so thrilling. Looking back on it, it seems so normal then. However, now I go, how did that happen? How was I so fortunate to just grab on and hold on for dear life? And it was the thrill ride of my life. Still is, but there is nothing like those days when, unlike today, the only source of music and entertainment was you, me, Billy Pearl, Robert W. Morgan, Bobby Ocean, who, by the way, did a wonderful job last week paying his tribute to Billy Pearl.
Didn't he?
And so we were the only game in town. Not that it's a big ego thing. It's just that when I answered phones, I never knew who was calling, but I knew that they were with me as much as I was with them. And I loved my listeners always. So it was just a magical time of communication. Now, today, my refrigerator, I could go up right now and punch up music on Amazon. My refrigerator plays music. Everything plays music. So we are a fortunate small bunch, which apparently and sadly is thinning out more and more every day. Look at the deaths we've had this year in entertainment already.
Oh my goodness.
Just so sad.
Imagine
Bob Saget.
And you know what's really odd is I got to know Bob Saget, and Bob Saget, I did a whole week together. And he is one of the raunchiest guys.
Well, and that was part of the comedy of him, because he would perform on television as the most innocent person in the world, and on stage, he was classy about it. He didn't do it like a Dice Clay where he just went up and cursed and was vulgar. He had intelligence behind that edgy stuff. He was very smart.
An incredibly intelligent guy. I was doing a fundraiser, and Bob Saget was part of this. And so we spent 4 days together and on the radio, and then at this event. And I have a picture, and everybody's posting pictures. And I thought, I'm not going to post a picture on Facebook because everybody in the world thinks that they're friends with Bob Saget.
Right.
I know that I'm not his best buddy, but we did get to know each other pretty well. And I did get to know that he was pretty damn raunchy.
So what can you tell us that would be family friendly that maybe not everyone knows?
There's nothing family friendly about Bob Saget. there was, I mean, you know, the character he portrayed as Danny Tanner.
Right.
It was simply not Bob Saget.
I like thinking of people who have passed as their legacy lives on, and that's the way I prefer to remember them. So he will always be Bob Saget from I didn't really watch his sitcom, but his home videos I thought was one of the most innovative, and he was unique in his humor. I know he had writers, but he could deliver a line that was so deadpan.
You start off first of all in a small town. You're in Hooterville, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Mayberry. Yeah. I was working somewhere and we came up with all these anti-competitive slogans. So we said, who cares? That was our slogan. Who cares? And then what's the point? So that's back in the day when these creative consultants would call in and say, hey, man, use your competition, make it sound like you're complimenting them, but work it in. I remember Candy did a York weekend. No one knew what York was unless you listened to that in the mirror. It was KROI spelled backwards. A York weekend. No one ever knew what it was, but they gave away tons of stuff calling it a York weekend, knowing that we were sitting across the street at Croy going, is that all you can do to combat us? You're playing every song we're playing. We got you 5-1 on numbers, and you come up with a York weekend just to put the knife in and try to turn it. Programming strategy sometimes is too hip for the room. John Rook told me that one time. Too hip for the room. So anyway, so I'm in Chicago and I do that, and I come back to Croy FM.
What's the whole deal in Chicago? I mean, Chicago's such a fun city.
That was great.
And so you have a great time in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And you're working for Clifton, right? Jerry Clifton.
Yes, Jerry Clifton, American
Jerry Clifton, who likes talking to himself in promos.
Well, that's all. Yeah, he's got his brain is split down the center, and when you put him in a promo, he just goes into conversation, rolls tape, and then we edit down to make sense. Hey, how's it going? Pretty good. How's it going with you? And he talks back and forth to himself. Now, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but when other stations were doing tune in Wednesday, blah, blah, and all of a sudden, hey, you want a free Corvette? Well, you've come to the right place. Oh, have I? Oh, absolutely. If you want a free Corvette, oh, I'd like a free Corvette. Then just stay where you are, because you can win 1, 2 free Corvettes. And we did that in Chicago. Gave away 2 Corvettes, but on the promo, he said, win 1, 2 free Corvettes. Yeah. A listener thought he said 3 Corvettes. So when we gave away the second vet, she sued us and got a vet because we couldn't prove that we didn't say free instead of 3. The promo had been destroyed. It was months afterwards. Of course, there are no copy written for Clifton promos. He would never sit down and write a promo. He would just turn the machine on, whatever came out as a promo. So there was no documentation that we didn't.
Well, that's the interesting thing in watching Jerry Clifton do a promo. You know, I didn't understand his way of thinking and his way of doing promos, because it sounded like a psychopath. Am I going to give away money? Yes, I am.
Yeah.
A very strange way of doing promos.
Well, it made me uncomfortable when I first went to work for him and started doing images, because I tried to kind of imitate that. It sounded, you got to be a bit off. He didn't live on Earth. So wherever whatever he tuned into to bring this stuff back cannot be faked. You can't imitate that. So I gave it up. I used to do promos like Bobby Ocean. And then I started going into Jerry Clifton. And now I just kind of do what I do. It depends on the format. I can do hip hop. I can do easy listening. I can do country liners. I have a different persona for each of them. Clifton had one, and Ocean has one, and they're both iconic. Oh, if I could only be known for having a style like that, because Ocean and Clifton were very different, yet one of a kind.
You know, as you were trying to compare Jerry Clifton and Bobby Ocean is very descriptive in his promos.
Oh yeah.
And Jerry Clifton just sounds, he's talking to himself. And that always really weirded me out.
Well, I'm glad he does, because I think it's therapy for him. And if he didn't have this career, we'd probably know him from a totally different reason. And when we are in a business, it requires us to be a little different.
For some reason, it just never clicked with me.
Well, as you know, there's nothing like sitting through a daily air check session with Clifton. He would drive me crazy. You know, you come in with your scoped air check. You've been on the air 3 hours. It's maybe 10 minutes long scope. He'd set it in the cassette machine, hit play, kick back, and he'd go, hey, yeah, oh, cool, man. Oh, yeah, okay, cool, yeah. And then you do something that you thought was really cool. I mean, just basic weather. You give a weather forecast. And he'd reach over and stop and say, what the fuck do you say that for? I go, what, Jerry? He goes, listen to this weather thing. And I go, I don't know. What did I do wrong? He said, hey, man, you gave the current temperature as 45 degrees outside. And I said, yeah. And he goes, would you give the temperature of the studio inside? I said, no. He goes, well, then don't say outside. Just don't say it. Just say 65 degrees in Chicagoland. I went, wow, if that's really important, fine. So he puts it back on. I'm doing all these skits. I think they're really great. He goes, oh, that was great. Oh, that's freaking great. And then I'll come on and do a set where I said, 256 now with the Stones on WeFM. And he'd stop it. What the F did you say that for? I said, what? He goes, you said it's 256 now. Are you going to give the time if it's not now? And talk about messing with my mind, because everybody else would say, hey, that was good. A good ramp. You hit the post. Oh, yeah, you're doing the promo liner cards are good. He would tell me that I gave the wrong way of saying a temperature and a time. Now, don't think that didn't mess with my mind. He taught me how to take out the garbage in my delivery, the crutch that we all learn to get rid of. And it made me a better jock. The old adage of less is more. And so I always associate WeFM, KROI-FM, the Clifton era, the Steve Rivers era, as a moment of evolution in my career. It wasn't anyone's particular doing. I was just absorbing all this stuff. I couldn't help but pull something away that made me a little more refined as a community.
So you get away from Clifton and you leave Chicago and you return to Sacramento.
Yeah, to KSFM with Brian White, who's my PD after Clifton left in Chicago. He came out here and took over KSFM. Clifton was our consultant. So I continued under Clifton here in Sacramento when I came back, although he only visited once in a while. I didn't go through daily air check sessions with him. So I worked for KSFM, and Brian White went to the East Coast, left, and they hired Dave Ferguson. And Dave came in, and Dave had a whole different vibe than Clifton. He was like hip hop, R&B, KSFM. So I learned how to do the hip hop R&B. I was a 43-year-old jock playing, Belle Biv DeVoe, Tony. So nice. They named it twice or three times. So I was it really put me out of my comfort zone again. And I loved that. So I worked there after Brian White left. And then I'm working for Ferguson as midday and production manager and creative. I was doing all the imaging, all the promos, everything. It was good. And all of a sudden I get a phone call. Hey, Tone, it's me, Bry White. I go, hey, Blind, what are you doing, man? He goes, hey, I just got the gig as program director at KFRC. My heart started beating. He goes, would you be interested in being our creative director? Production director. I think I hung the phone up and I was in San Francisco in an hour and a half. I'd never driven there so quickly. Interviewed with the GM. First time I met Bobby Ocean, I walk in to interview. And here's Ocean sitting there in the lobby. You know, Bobby, he's not assuming. He's just sitting there. I walk in, I go, Bobby Ocean. And I'm still getting goosebumps, Bobby. And I interviewed with the general manager. I forgot his name. He hired me. Bobby was my voice. I got to write for Bobby Ocean. I would send him my scripts for all the promos. He was our promo voice. It was KFRC live again. Oh, I get excited talking about that. So working with Ocean and taking over a position that was already a reverend place, working with Phil Lerza, the engineer, Tim Jordan, the creative producer. I had all this cool stuff. And the week I was hired, we took out all the analog equipment in the production studio. We were the first in San Francisco to go fully digital with a 1 gig Mac drive. People came from all over. All the TV stations came over to see our 1 gig nonlinear hard drive. You could barely fit a 60-second commercial in the memory if it had a bunch of sound effects. But it was awesome, man. And then we acquired the Sharks, the Raiders, and the Oakland A's. And I was their producer. So I got to go. You're listening to the Oakland Raiders Radio Network, brought to you by Budweiser, the king of beers. Fly United Airlines. And it was just one of those things. I'd go in on Monday. The Sharks, the Raiders, and the A's would all have script for me. I'd just turn it on. I'd read the liners. And it was sent out to all the flagship stations. So I would, whenever there was a game on, I was on every one of their stations as the booth announcer. And I dug that, man. And that was KFRC. So worked with Doug Bryan, Sue Hall, Ron Parker, amazing talent. J. Paul Huddleston, 2020 News. He was J. Paul Emerson, a J. Paul Huddleston study, who grew up to be J. Paul Emerson.
J. Paul Emerson and J. Paul Huddleston were two different people.
Yeah. J. Paul Huddleston was a KHJ. And so J. Paul Emerson had worked, I don't know where he worked.
He had worked in Phoenix at KUPD, okay. And he was just a very talented man. And I had gone to visit him when he was at KMEL when it was Top 40. And he used to be on KUPD in Phoenix. But yeah, J. Paul Emerson, Huddleston, two different people. But J. Paul Emerson, such a very talented guy.
I love the man. And when he came to KFRC, I'd been there about 4 months. It was the first time ever I worked at a station. He'd been on the air a week, and we had 2 bomb threats because of a newscast. He was so eloquent with words, and his segues from one story to the next really is what made him either shocking or so heart-touching. So there happened to be a report about your odds of dying from a heart attack are greatest when you first jump out of bed in the morning. More people die from heart attacks early in the morning when they jump out of bed. So he tells that story and he goes, if that's the case, all the communist Chinese tomorrow should jump out of bed and see what happens. Now, we're in San Francisco. You don't make comments about Asians. And I don't know what he meant by that. Everybody said, why did he say that? So the phones lit up. We had bomb threats for a week or two. But our ratings went sky high. And so it's just odd that he was so vibrant. Do you know is he still around? Because I don't know.
No, he passed away.
He passed away, yeah. That's too bad. But I'd love to find some air checks of him, even from the KFRC days, because he was so powerful. Didn't he have that voice where when he, whatever he said,
he had such a great voice,
man.
And I've got such a great air check from him from KUPD, I think from 1974, when he was J. Paul and Company on KUPD. And oh my goodness, just an amazing talent. an amazing talent, an amazing journalist, an amazing newsman and broadcaster.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear that too, by the way, Sky, if you could give me a link to that, I would love to hear it, and I won't play it for anyone.
I'll post that. So you end up back in Sacramento. You're back in the SAC.
After San Francisco, I get hired back here because, I commuted for 3 years. That's 1,000 miles a week to go to work. I didn't want to move to San Francisco. I just gotten married and bought a house here. So I commuted every day.
So all the time that you were working at KFRC,
yeah,
you were commuting
6 hour minimum every day round trip. So I worked a 40-hour week. Yeah. There were times I would get home at midnight in Sacramento, get 4 hours sleep, get up at 4 a.m. Because if you don't leave at 4 a.m., you might as well leave at 8. You're still going to get there at 9. So I would leave at 4 and be on the bridge before the big backup, just to get to work by 7:30 or 8. So yeah, I got no sleep for 3 years. On the weekends, I don't remember because I would catch up on all this lack of sleep. I rode Amtrak for 2 years to the point where they knew me so well, they let me drive the train one day.
Oh, that's cool.
And I would sleep. I would nap on the train, and I developed this sixth sense of knowing what stops we were at. I don't know how. I was snoring until we get to, Martinez. That's the last stop before we got into the Bay Area. So, I would sleep from Sacramento to Martinez, and somehow I just would wake up, go wash my face, get everything ready, and I'd land in San Francisco in time to go to the office. So yeah, it was. But at the time, I didn't care. I was in my 40s. I was rambunctious. I just wanted to work at KFRC. I'd have walked every day. I never thought I would ever work there. Growing up listening to this thing called KFRC was like, I don't know. I was either going to go into radio or be a priest. And had I been a priest, KFRC would have been the Vatican. To me, no doubt. When I would walk up and down the halls at KFRC, it wasn't over on Bush Street. It had moved over to Washington, but still the vibe. And I would just walk down the hollowed halls of KFRC, like the Brill building. I could hear and feel the spirit of KFRC coming out of the studios. Magic. Yeah. I'm not imagining it. It was something that I used as fuel. I mean, we're creative people.
When is it that you decided to hang up the radio headphones?
Okay, I came back.
Not the broadcasting.
No,
headphones.
I came back to Sacramento after getting tired of commuting for 3 years, and Jerry McKenna hired me back at the same KSFM studios, except he wanted me to be the program director of an all sports station. We were just changing format. Magic 1380 was what it was called. And he wanted to overnight change it to The Score 1380. Now, I already had the Sharks, the Raiders, and the A's. So I brought them up. I go, hey, I'm going to leave. I'll still do your VOs. Going up to program a station. You don't have any of these in Sacramento. Why don't we just pull all 3 franchises up and we'll make, 1380, The Score, the new home of these in Sacramento. So they did. And because they were so happy that I did that, they gave me carte blanche. The Raiders would send up their cheerleaders for promotions here in Sacramento any day I wanted. They'd put them on the private jet, turboprop, 12 passenger. They'd fly them up to Sac. I'd go pick them up and we'd go do promotions, man. Nobody had the Raiders here. They were in LA at the time. No, were they? I don't know. No, they flew up from Oakland. They had a private jet. So we would do that. And then after about a week of doing that, they came up 3 times in a week. I'm going, wow. The guy who's in charge of the airplane said, hey, Tone, any home game, you invite 11 friends. We got a 12 passenger jet. We'll just set it up to Sac and you can get on and we'll fly you right down, pick you up at the airport with a limo, you over to the game. You sit with Al Davis, all the VIPs. You can watch the game. And believe me, I was one of the most popular people in Northern California because I invited all my friends. I invited a few clients. So it was just amazing. That was so surreal. So I'm in Sacramento doing radio. It failed. KNCI's sports station, just one. I had Jim Rome on, I had the dog, I had Bob and Tom. We were a hot little radio station, but we couldn't go up against the heritage of not KNC either. Who's the sports station here in Sacramento? Anyway, there's still number one. So the format failed. The salespeople couldn't sell it. It was a great radio station. Sounded fantastic. Everybody loved it. So a salesman at that station who only sold hip hop and R&B, his name's Mike Mitchell, God rest him. He and I became business partners, and we opened an ad agency. All the big clients here in Sacramento, and I was in charge of creative and product services and creative writing, and I would score, and I wrote jingles. Didn't know I could do that. If you surround yourself with the right people, you just got to sit around and, instead of knowing about music and getting degrees, hire those people, sit around and go, hey, can you do something like this? Crawdads on the river. And they take that and they make it into the most amazing thing. You come back a couple of days later and it and it won awards. The oddest thing was I was never on the radio more than when I was doing commercials. I couldn't get away from, but there were times when I was on every commercial in a stop set. It was 2004. I went to work for the Bustos, and we started a revival of Boss Radio here in Sacramento. And they hired me and my newsman from Yuba City back in the day, Tom Head. Except when Head and I worked back in Yuba City, I had my real last name, which isn't Cox. So all of a sudden I hire him and we become Tony Cox and Tom Head in the morning. And he does news and I do music, and we have a music show. Jim Hall followed me middays. Rick Shannon, God rest his soul, did afternoons. Chris West was brought out from Oklahoma and he did evenings. Forgot who did all nights. We did that for a year. And we didn't one time say this, but every day someone would call and say, is this Tony Cox and Tom Head? We go, yeah. And they would go, hey, man, did you know you guys were Cox and Head? I go, of course we know that, but we don't say that on the radio. We don't have to say that. So that was my last time. It lasted a year. They went back to country. And so I went into my own business. I started my internet business and did a bunch of stuff with my internet, which I still
and now you kind of stepped away for a while, but now you are once again back in the studio. You're producing. You're doing production.
I'm doing TV and radio and all kinds of media for clients that now need little video snippets for their website, or I still do commercials at broadcast. I'm doing narratives. I'm doing concerts, all from right over there in the corner of my humble abode. I can do video editing, just like you.
As so many people are doing these days.
Yeah.
And so how do people get in touch with you? Do you have a website? Do you have
not for me? I have an email, I guess would be the best. Tony Cox Videos, plural, at yahoo.com. Remember their jingle? Yahoo! They don't do that anymore.
Goodness, I haven't heard that in such a long time.
So I have one of those accounts, Tony Cox Videos, and it's COX. Don't embarrass the mailman. It's COX. Videos, plural, at yahoo.com. I'd love to hear from you.
Tony Cox, such a great time talking to you. And thank you for the time. And we've got to get together again because we didn't nearly talk about all this stuff that I wanted to catch up with.
Yeah, I know, huh?
Because we start talking about all kinds of different stuff, and the Billy Pearl thing really threw us off.
Still mind blow, Billy Pearl,
and it's still blowing our minds, and I know it is. And it's amazing how many people we've lost in these last few days. And think about it. And as we're doing this broadcast, we're less than 2 weeks into
the new year. Yeah.
And we have lost so many people as we've just stepped into 2022. It's unbelievable.
Well, by the grace of God, you and I are still doing it. And if you were to combine our experience, we have over 130 years of broadcast. So we can't talk about this in a 30-minute or an hour program. There's just too much depth. You have to dive into somebody's soul and bring it out without seeming like you're trying to pull a tooth as a dentist. So
it's not
you kind of are like Novocaine. You kind of are like Novocaine. Go ahead, take them all out. You make it easy. So thank you, David. It was an honor.
Very kind of you to say, Tony Cox, and I appreciate those kind words, and I appreciate your time. And I would like you, and you have an open invitation to come back to the show. I would like you to come back to the show because I have so many more things to talk to you.
Hold on, I'll be right there. What time does the next flight be?
Happy New Year.
Thank you,
health.
Sir. Thank you.
Tony, take care of yourself. Thank you, Tony Cox. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you do come back to Radio Memories because we've got so much more to talk about. And you know what I'm talking about. I thank you for your time. And you know what? I hope you join us next week. We've got another great guest coming up, and I thank you for watching and listening on Spotify. And I hope to see you next week for more great Radio Memories.
Check out past interviews on the Radio Memories YouTube channel and on Spotify. Click the links. This is Maggie McKay for Radio Memories, a Dave Schuyler production.
Radio Memories.